Hey everybody, happy Friday. I am living it large here in Detroit. The sun is shining, but it snowed last night. I want to welcome everybody to the Test, Fail, Learn, Grow, the show for builders who know that the real work is going to happen off the camera. I'm Adam House, and today's episode is about telling the truth, the kind that happens when we stop pretending everything's fine and start dealing with what is real. Our guest today didn't just build a business, he built a mission. And it started with a loss that could have knocked him out of the game. And a lot of us, it does happen. But he was able to recover and turn those obstacles into stepping stones. And so today, I'm joined by Howard Dvorkin, the founder and chairman of Debt.com, a powerhouse in the financial wellness space that's helped over 13 million families regain control of their finances. So I don't know about you, but if you've ever been in a tough financial situation, it can wreck every area of your life. So again, it's not just about the business, it's about his mission. And this is just the headline. What Howard really built is trust in an industry, you know as well as I do, riddled with skepticism. And his journey goes back to a tough childhood in Jersey, where a tragic loss at the age of 13 forced him to grow up really fast. He's a CPA, a serial entrepreneur, not a common pedigree, and a relentless advocate for financial literacy and mental health. But above all, he's someone that knows that real success starts when you stop running from your past and start using it as fuel. Howard, welcome to the show. Let's dive in.
Thanks so much, Adam, for having me on the show. I've been looking forward to it all week. So let's go.
We're here, we're ready, and it's a Friday. People are tuning in, so they want to have a little bit of fun too. But what I want to do, right, the structure of our show is test, fail, learn, and grow. A lot of people, right, at the beginning, they don't even start with the test. They get analysis paralysis. Then other people fail and give up. Then some fail and stop, right? And the real opportunity is when you learn, and that is how you grow. So I want to go back to the first big leap. You're a CPA. You got a steady career, and then you made the decision that a lot of people want to do but never do, and you want to walk away and you build something that didn't really exist yet. What pushed you to take this risk?
It was necessity, Adam. I was the world's worst employee. I couldn't work for anybody. I swear I probably got fired from almost every job I ever had. Maybe there was one. No, I got fired from that one too in high school. So almost every single job. But honestly, and you know, it was always my desire. And frankly, I was bred as an entrepreneur growing up in a house that encouraged entrepreneurism, encouraged uh, uh, going and doing your own thing. And my father was an entrepreneur, and my mother was somewhat of an entrepreneur. Actually, she was a pretty good entrepreneur. And my grandparents, and listen, I'm a little bit older than you, and growing up in Jersey in the 70s, we still were impacted by the lessons that the World War II brought us, and the immigration of all the Jews from Europe coming in, fleeing the Nazis. And yeah, we were always taught to depend on ourselves. Don't depend on anybody else. And that was a great upbringing, but it was a tough upbringing too, because it was you. You didn't have a back. You didn't have anybody behind you. So you go and you learn, and I learned as a CPA on other people's dimes, and I did great work, and I was actually a pretty good accountant back in the day. Uh, can't even use my adding machine now, but the fact of the matter is I was pretty good, but I always enjoyed the entrepreneurial part, bringing in business, trying to grow the accounting firm, rather than just sitting there with a green eye shade in the dark counting other people's money. That was not me. And I enjoyed that experience, but frankly, it became non-rewarding, and it was tough. And when I was told that, oh, it's going to take you 15 years to become a partner at this major firm. It was Arthur Andersen. I'm like, 15 years? I'm thinking like 3, 4. And I'm like, yeah, I got to move on. I don't have 15 years to wait around for the hopes of becoming a partner so I can even work harder more. So
Well,
that's
I want to ask you a couple questions. So I've been an entrepreneur now for 28 years, and I have 4 boys, and actually 2 of them are now interning at the House of Bricks, and one is the chief copy officer, and the other is the chief caffeine officer. So I always got to believe you got to earn your way up, and I want to just ask, because my parents were not entrepreneurs, what was it like growing up in that household? Because there's ups and downs, right? There's peaks and valleys, instability, stability, good times, great times, bad times. How was that as a child growing up, and how's that influencing you now?
it's interesting because it wasn't a traditional household. I never played organized sports until high school. So I didn't really know how to do that stuff. And that wasn't really encouraged. What was encouraged was, make money. Go and not that it was for the sake of making a dollar, but it was more the sake of, do something entrepreneurial. My One of my first thoughts were, and one of the reasons I didn't play organized sports was my dad would drag me to his office or his store and make me sweep the floors and scrub toilets at a very young age. By the way, I'm still available for that duty. So if anybody needs their floors swept or the bathrooms cleaned, I'm the guy to call. But I will tell you that, when my friends came home from playing baseball, I would be the guy with the lemonade stand that was sitting there, out there for a few hours, and they would come up and buy lemonade from me. When there was a fundraiser for muscular dystrophy or one of the charities, my sister and I would have a carnival, and we would put together games and a fun house in our basement and raise money. One of my one of the hardest jobs was selling Passover cookies, because today is Passover, and Passover cookies in an Italian neighborhood. And I would knock on the guys' doors, and they would come out with the wife beaters and say, "What? Passover? What's Passover?" And it was fun. But
You can just tell them it's biscotti.
yeah, but it wasn't. The Scotties way up on the Passover cookies.
I'm
They
sure.
were terrible.
Yeah.
But and they're probably from last Passover. But frankly, it was always encouraged for us to do all this stuff. And then, I lived a great childhood. And then all of a sudden, my life changed. My dad used to drag me into the office, into his store, starting at age 10, and to do those tasks. And then, I woke up one day, and he stumbles into my room, falls at the foot of my bed, and has a heart attack. And I had no clue what was going on, and he passed away in my arms. And that set me off on a life of challenges for the next few years, probably for the next 4 or 5 years. Did some really bad stuff, hung out with really bad people, did things that I'm not proud of today, but it was part of my journey, and I accept that. And then I got into serious trouble and said, "Yeah, this isn't working out. This is not what I want to be doing." And for the rest of my life, and I changed the course of my life. I buckled down. I focused on my grades, and I went to college and turned around and got a degree in accounting. Started with an accounting firm, Laventhal and Horvath, which was an unbelievable experience. And then a couple of years later, they went out of business. Arthur Andersen, which was the premier accounting firm in the world, came in and took over the office, fired everybody but myself and another guy. And we turned around, and I was there like a year, and I'm like, yeah, this is not working for me. I can't stand these people. And I went and started a business, sat down at my kitchen table, quit my job, bought a house, and got married all within 3 months. And the only thing that left was the business. So I guess it worked out. But uh, turned around, started a business, but I did a lot of work, a lot of research before I went in. I knew exactly what the business was, and it frankly never really existed. It was in existence, but it wasn't run as a business. It was more run as a social service, and it was being performed by a lot of churches and social groups that were there to help people, but they didn't have the discipline, they didn't have the technology, and frankly, they weren't doing it the way it should have been done. So I was able to take what I learned in the accounting world and apply it to people that needed help but couldn't afford professional guidance. And that's what I gave them. And we started out with a plan and focused on that plan. And obviously, things changed. I thought I was going to do credit repair, and it changed quickly into a credit counseling business. And I was like, okay. And I was trying to still maintain my accounting practice, which was pretty darn good, because the people would come in and say, "Oh, you're an accountant. Can you do my taxes?" I'm like, "Sure, I could do your taxes." So then it came down to, after a couple of years of this, I was doing about 400 tax returns a year, which is an ungodly amount for a small, two-man shop, and and trying to do the credit counseling. And I said, listen, I'm making $85 an hour doing my accounting work, but I'm making more doing my credit counseling business. And I enjoyed credit counseling because it was immediate help to people and you got thank yous. And so we started what I call and it was a converted janitor's closet. Early on, I went to a executive suite, and I went there on a Friday, and it was filled with a bunch of janitor's supplies. And when I went in, it had a fresh coat of paint. When I went in on the Monday, I rolled my stuff in. Fresh coat of paint, had a desk, a chair, and a phone, and that's all it had. And I turned around and started on in 1993. January 4th was my first real day of business. And I sat there and say, what the hell did I just do to my career? And I just turned around and helped a lot of people. Phones started ringing, placed advertisements all over the place. And I have some cute stories where we would play radio, we would buy radio advertising, and to get extra value, I was in the office. So all through the night, I was working probably 18 hours a day. So all through the night from 7 a.m. or 7 p.m. till 11, they would have call-ins and dedications. So every night I would call in with a different voice. Hey, this is for the crew at Consolidated Credit. Then play this Springsteen. And they would play it, and I got some extra advertisement. And in fact, I was the only person working at Consolidated Credit that time. So it was a really great time, and it was fun, and it was exciting, and I wasn't making any money, but it was fun, and I knew where it went. And then a couple months into it, all of a sudden the phone stops ringing, and I'm like, "What's going on?" And I'm like calling up my mom, and my mom was pretty entrepreneurial herself, and she was incredibly intelligent, and she would tell me. She would say, nah, people are just taking their minds off their bills. They're doing it for Easter. They're hanging out. They're thinking about Easter. I'm like, okay, they're thinking about Easter. And sure enough, she was right. People weren't thinking about their bills. They were thinking about Easter plans. And all of a sudden the phone started ringing and we grew and grew and grew. And then we made a lot of money and we did well and we helped a lot of people. Fast forward, we grew the company. We went from a local company to a national company, then an international company, and then we expanded. And since then, we have helped in the last 32 years over 13 million people. We have paid off nearly $10 billion worth of people's debts and have really given people peace of mind and put, some values and more importantly integrity into a business that lacked integrity, as you said earlier when we started.
Yeah, and so we're all about authenticity and transparency in the House of Bricks, right? Everyone on LinkedIn, I exited 20 companies. I'm an expert. I'm a guru. If you look at my profile, it says I fail 90% of the time and it's probably more than that if we're honest about what it is to be an entrepreneur. But a couple things, right, is you had no plan B. And I get entrepreneurs that approach me and they're like, what do you think of this idea? I'm kind of building it on the side. I say, I think it's a good idea, but it's going to fail because you got to burn the boats to be an entrepreneur and be successful.
That's right.
And not have a backup plan. And I've had that moment of sitting at the table wondering what the heck did I just do with a notepad, trying to figure out how you're going to feed your family. You just left a secure job. So the people out there that are listening, there are very few people that build a business on the side and leave some corporate job and then just step into success when it's ready. You got to burn the boats. And then those moments of being in your office, in that startup office, like I had my first business. It was a direct marketing company. I had a 2-bedroom apartment. I left my job. I had $200 and I was 19 making like $5-6 grand a month. So that was like $1 million when you're 19 living in Miami. And I was like, I can do this on my own. And I left and started it. And I had 3 phones set up in my second bedroom. I had a sales extension, a marketing extension, and finance. Well, guess who answered all 3 phones? It was me. Like, you want to talk?
Different voice? Did you use different voices for each phone?
Yeah, I said, you want to talk to my man? Like, if I had a problem with a client, here, I'll transfer. They're like, let me talk to your manager. And I said, yeah, this is Bob. Adam's one of our best sales guys, whatever. So, and look, the company grew and super profitable, and we kind of rode the refinance wave. But I love those moments. And if you watch Jeff Bezos at all, he's still got the door from his first office at Amazon as his desk. Like, it's just those moments you can't replace them. Everyone wants the big office and the millions and millions of dollars, which is great, but I miss and love, and I guess I'm addicted to those startup moments. So
the best moments of my career were those times. And it's funny, I got people running around here that started with me then, and they've been with me for 30 years, and I love them like family, and we are a family. And I know sometimes people say, "Oh, don't call yourself a family business." Well, we are a family. We've been together for a long time. We got each other's backs.
Yeah, and I love that. Yeah,
we are a family. But
yeah,
more importantly, savor the moments. Remember the moments. It's not about making money. It's not about making money. It's about enjoying the journey. And if you do well and you're good at what you do, I promise you'll make the money to pay you for your time. But you got to enjoy the journey. There's a lot of people out there that make a lot of money that hate what they're doing. I happen to love what I'm doing. And I don't see myself, I'm 61 years old now. I don't see myself slowing down anytime soon. So maybe, Adam, in another 20 years, I'll be like old as hell, and you'll be, I won't even be able to talk, but maybe you'll interview me then on your podcast.
If I'm still doing it, you're welcome anytime. So I know this journey well, right? And you had the test, you kind of got all the way to the success, but every time we take a big leap, our dreams do meet reality. What was kind of the first wall you hit that made you kind of question what you were doing? I know the holiday time or whatever, but was there some big wall where you like,
Sure,
looking
sure.
back, I can't climb this?
I mean, listen, there's nothing I can't climb. Give me time and I will go over that wall, through that wall, around that wall, or under that wall. So in my mind, yes, could I fail? But the only time you can't you fail is when you quit. If you don't quit, you never fail. And I'm not a quitter. I don't like failing. And I've failed plenty of times, but you fail forward, Adam. I'm not sure you've ever heard that. When you fail, you learn you learn something from that failure and you bring that to your next time you try to do something. And all of us have failed. One of the things that have hurt that I've learned along the way is I in the beginning, after I started the company, I brought in a partner who was a marketing partner, and we were making decent money. We were making real decent money. Um, and he got a little too comfortable, stopped working, and started to do a bunch of drugs. And he would come in high as a kite and leave in the middle of the afternoon and come back after a couple hours higher. And I was like, I did a month of this watching this happen. And I'm like, man, you got to go. And one of us has to go. And he's like, I don't know how to run this business. I'm like, I know. So guess who's the one? And by the way, I ran into him a couple of years back and he thanked me because it was a structured buyout. And he's like, listen, I know what I was and I know what I was doing during the time. And you allowed me, you were a man of your word, which I am a man of my word. But more importantly, you paid me for everything you said you were going to do, and you did it on time. I never had to chase you, and I got the chance to watch my children grow up. And that to me, although I always felt bad about pushing that partner out, that redeemed my feelings. And you know what? We hugged and we went on our way. But it was a great feeling to have him come to me and say, I thank you for
Yeah.
what you did.
Yeah, and it's amazing making those tough decisions. And I know when you asked him, it was a rhetorical question, right? Like one of us has to leave. The writing was on the wall for him. But I have people to this day that still reach out to me and thank me for the opportunities that they have had working with me. It's all about those relationships, and sometimes you have to make tough decisions as a leader. But that was a test, fail, learn, grow opportunity for him, right? He made some decisions that led to failure, but he learned from it and was able to thank you for that. So in the industry that you're in, right, there's a lot of stigma about it, a lot of bad actors. How are you able to differentiate yourself other than just words? Because everyone says we're honest, we have integrity, we have character. It's like everyone's core values, right? But no one acts in them. And there's certain industries that just have a bad reputation. How are you able to separate yourself?
So listen, as I said earlier in the podcast, I took what I learned as an accountant, which is probably the most ethical profession you could get into. And I learned what was right, learned what was wrong, never crossed the line, but always treat people with respect and never ever do something that benefits you and not others. But as I said, I was never really money motivated. I was more, if I'm good at what I do, I'm going to be rewarded. And I've always done the right thing for the clients. When I got into this business early on, it was cowboys and Indians, man. There were people running around stealing people's money, running away from things, advertising crazy claims, and I just maintained my ethics and said, I'm not crossing that line. And I will go to that line, no question. We are aggressive, but we will never, ever cross that line knowingly, ever. And you know what? Nobody's infallible. And when you do make a mistake, and listen, when you help 13 million people out of debt, you're gonna make a mistake here and there. There's
For
just
sure.
it's common sense. But when we do make a real mistake, that we own up to it. Here's
Yeah.
your money back. And I go into meetings with my counterparts these days, and I'm the grandpa of the group. Sadly, I'm very immature for my advanced age, but I am the grandpa. And they're like, "How have you been in this business for 32 years?" And I'll be like, "Because I don't screw people. I won't cross that line, and I don't care if I make some money, a lot of money, or no money, as long as I have my integrity and I know in my heart of heart I did the right thing." And that's the one thing that entrepreneurs today, it's easy to take advantage of people. It's easy to lie. It's easy to tell little lies that become big lies. But the reality is, if you never lie, then you don't have to remember your lies, so you won't have to be caught in a lie. So there's no reason. If you're really good at what you do, tell the truth all the time and be straight up to people. And I swear and I promise people that they will be rewarded. No question in my mind.
So, when we were talking a little bit before, and you filled out kind of the test fail, learn, grow model, one of the things you talked about learning was to slow down and build systems. So, me, someone that runs 150 miles per hour, and not without my team around me, there wouldn't be any businesses. I would just be continuously breaking walls and leaving pieces everywhere. How are you able to slow down? Because there is that tension, right? You just left your job, you had a salary, it was a secure career, the American dream, the 401k, I assume, right? Work another decade and retire. So you've got that pressure of, we got to make money, but we got to build systems. So I'm ready to learn from you also, because I still have a problem with this.
So, it's a funny thing. The systems, there was no real credible software when I started this business, in this industry. So what did I do? I built my own software. And you know what? I'm a guy who could barely turn on a computer, and I'm sitting there writing code for the first time. And I built the software that got me around, but it wasn't efficient. And then finally I met somebody who had software. It wasn't very good, but at least it was better than the pile of junk I built. And you know what? We made it efficient, and then we further developed software in conjunction with another company that allowed us to grow. I mean, we move $20 million a month out of our trust accounts. I mean, it's a lot of checks, it's a lot of wires, it's sophisticated things. And the CRM that we use is very sophisticated. And we always invested in technology. If I tell you, Adam, that I've spent $40 million in technology over the course of the last 30 years, I think I'm low compared to what I think we spent. I'm embarrassed to say what I think we spent. Actually, I'm not embarrassed. I'll tell you, because we turned around. I have a new system using AI and all this fabulous technology. I've spent at least $10 million on this system to get this thing going. And I'm not even done with it. And I'm not proud of that, but you can always spend money, but you got to spend it smartly and build the systems and build the practices. And that's why we've been able to be in business. And we built the largest credit counseling agency in the world. not by luck, it's by skill. And I often say that people say, "How are you so big, Howard, compared to everybody else?" It's not that we're so great. It's just our competition was not the greatest then. And they would think that we were cheating or doing something. No, we just worked really hard and we were super efficient at what we did. We used technology and exploited that technology not only for internal operations but for marketing and our training and everything you could think of. I'm a CPA by training. We probably have 8 CPAs on staff and another half dozen lawyers running around here. We are very compliant, but we're always focused on efficiency and why waste money. I have one saying before I know you're going to ask me another question.
Oh yeah, I
I
got.
always have one I always have one saying when I try to orient somebody who's buying technology or whatever they're buying. They could buy pencils as far as I care. Beat up our vendors as much as you can because the dollar's better in our pocket than it is theirs. And you will benefit from that dollar in our pocket. So,
And I absolutely do like to have good negotiations with vendors to obtain favorable pricing. And it is just an odd mix of being a CPA and an entrepreneur, but it's a great combination because you are watching your dollars. And a lot of the startups that we work with, what are the two things they think they need? Always sales and cash. But sales doesn't mean spending more on sales. It means becoming more efficient or getting better people or processes or systems, or they think they need to raise capital. Well, capital on a bad foundation just makes the cracks bigger and more difficult to repair. So, yes, sales and cash can grow a business, but often better systems and strategy can do that. So, comparing where you were at the beginning to where you are now, what is the growth that you have had? And if you were to start a business today, how would it be different than how you did it when you started debt.com?
it's interesting because I've started many businesses and currently I probably run between our real estate partnerships, our technology companies, our debt relief companies, our aviation business. We run a lot of things. And there's probably, I wouldn't be surprised if it's well over 100, maybe 150 different companies. That being said, they're not, that sounds like a lot, but they all do the same thing. So it's
Mm-hmm.
really accounting for that. But um, listen, my biggest happy point is when I'm sitting in a restaurant and I take a napkin out and I borrow the waitress's pen and I come up with an idea and write out the business plan on the back of a napkin. And a month later, the company's incorporated, has employees, a year later making money, 2 years later making a lot of money and being successful. And I'm not saying that always happens because I've had a lot of uh, failures. There was a point where I never failed because I always controlled it, and now in that I always personally controlled the business. Now I entrust our entrepreneurial endeavors to other people, younger. I'm trying to go younger. This is a pattern. Um, and they do a great job, but they don't, they miss a few things. And I am the kind of person that allows people to fail. And because if I tell you, if you're my partner and I say, no, don't do this, you're going to always wonder if you should have done that or you wanted to do it your way. Instead, I say, okay, you could do it. I would do it this way. They fall down. I pick them up off the ground. I dust them off and say, okay, now it's my turn. Do it this way. And dust off and do it this way. And it's usually successful. For example, last night I had one of my partners call me, and he wanted to give somebody the general manager a raise, and I'm like, okay, well, how is he paid now? And he said, he has a base salary, and I want to go to X. And I said, well, tell me about what you're trying to do. And he goes, I'm trying to get him to sell more. I go, well, then increasing a base salary doesn't make a lot of money. You want to pay him more, which is fine. But shouldn't we be paying more when we make more to him? And he's like, yeah. I go, well, shouldn't you be changing the percentage? And I always like, which I learned from another partner, and I have lots of partners, by the way, because I can't do it all myself anymore. And I said, he's like, he's paid on gross revenue. Well, shouldn't it be gross profits, which is gross revenue less your cost of goods sold? He's like, oh yeah. And why don't we pay him a little bit on net? And he's like, oh, I like that. And then I'm like, okay, well, why don't, he's like, gave me a term. And I'm like, well, why don't you pay him a little bit on gross profit and more on the net? Because the net is what our profits are, and
Right.
we're willing to share. And he's like, wow, that's great. Let me run the numbers and get back to you. I go, great. So listen, I've been there. I've seen it. I've done it. Now I'm the old guy in the room sitting back. If I had a beard, I'd be going like this. So, but I'm not, I don't have a beard, but I know a lot of things. I've seen a lot of things. I've failed a ton of times, and I've won a bunch of times. So don't be afraid to fail. And if, when you fail, fail forward.
Yeah, I love that. And don't stop failing, right? Fail forward, and going forward is how you learn that
Don't
failure
play it
creates.
safe, because if you don't fail, then you never took a risk.
Right.
That's no fun. Risk is part of the DNA of an entrepreneur.
Well, I tell people not taking a risk is a bigger risk than taking the risk, because you're going to stay who you are and in the same place and miss out. Regret is a bill that no one wants to pay and no one can afford to pay in life. So you filled out the worksheet, the test fail, learn, grow worksheet. There are a couple of things in there. Your big promise, right? If you stop letting fear and misinformation control your finances, you can take back your power and build lasting stability. And why that matters is because financial struggles are more common than people think, and shame keeps them stuck. So the actionable takeaway is, don't wait until things feel unmanageable. Get honest about your situation. It's not just your finances, it's your business, it's your life. Like, we all need advisory. And I want to thank you for joining the Test, Fail, Learn, Grow, the House of Bricks. We've been building for a couple of years. We've made great impacts on many entrepreneurs in our Startup X program, our advisory services, helping them raise capital. It's been a great run for us, and we're hitting that inflection point as well, which is a great moment. I love the struggle in the beginning, but when that inflection point does start to hit, that feels really good too, because you can look back and see the obstacles that you turned into stepping stones, the people you impacted along the way, your team that stuck with you in the trenches, getting them to see some light. So as we wrap up, any closing thoughts for our listeners today? And you are welcome back anytime.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. And I think what you're doing is a great, great opportunity for potential entrepreneurs to learn from people who have gotten their teeth kicked in and got back up on their feet. So that's a great thing. I guess what I would say to any aspiring entrepreneur, and I say it all the time, when somebody says, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to start this company. What you don't want to do is 10 years from now said I shoulda, coulda, but didn't. So if you're going to take a chance, take it and do everything you can to be successful, but honestly, you got to watch the dollars. You got to live within your means. And I got to justify this hour, so I got to pitch my company a little bit. But I
Please
mean,
do.
basically, people turn around and spend a lot of money. And at debt.com, where we teach people how not to waste money, and people live a life. And because you're an entrepreneur, you got to look a certain way and dress a certain way in your offices. need to be in a certain place. No, you got to watch every dime. You got to drive whatever you're comfortable driving. You got to live in a place where you're comfortable living in. But more importantly, you got to be authentic. You don't need to be somebody that you're not. Be authentic to yourself. That's the only person you need to improve and impress. And focus on doing good work. And certainly at debt.com, we do great work, and sometimes we can't help them. But a lot of the times we can set up a good plan to get people rid of their debts, get them on the right track, or simply teach them how to live their life within their means. So,
Well, I'll tell you what, I have a business idea that you probably thought of already. We have a up and coming generation of teenagers that are going to be buried in debt. So I have 3 teenage boys at home, and even my 11-year-old. Dad, can you Venmo me money? Hit me on Apple Pay, Cash App, Chime. Like they have 15 different apps and ways to get money, and they don't like touch and feel it and like pay at an actual store. It just arrives in their phone. So I guarantee this upcoming generation, it may be a teaching opportunity for debt.com. I'm surprised in high schools they don't teach more about money and finance, because these kids have $1,000 phones that they walk around with. Like, I got a bag of marbles and a Crown Royal bag, I think, when it turned 10, you know? So
that purple bag is a nice bag.
Hey,
but,
I love that thing. I didn't know what Crown Royal was at the time. I thought it was just like, some, royal thing, but now I do know what
listen,
Crown
the
Royal is.
best time to teach the young or to teach your kids is when they're young. Sometimes if you try to teach them when they're older, it doesn't sink in. But I always, in fact, it's funny you say that, because I am pushing 2 bills in Washington, D.C. right now. One was just introduced to lower the student loan interest to 2%, instead of the 6, 7, 8%, even 9% in some cases that people are paying. 2% going forward, and that's going to solve a lot of problems.
Well, please do that soon, because I've got 3 boys coming into college.
Come on, brother, you gotta do the 529 plan. I'll teach you all about it.
I've got those. So when I sold my second company, I was, I think, 26. My advisor was like, "I know you don't have kids yet, but you got to start the 529." And so I have that. So yeah, but sorry, what was the second thing you were going to say?
The second thing is having the federal government tie funding to local school bureaus, boards, or local school systems to finance. One of the things would be they have to implement a personal financial course into their curriculum for all high school students, and teach them. Now, I may be putting myself out of business, but that's okay. But the reality is, as long as they're issuing credit cards and people want to buy stuff, I'm going to be in business for a long time, and we are the best in the business. So I'm happy about that.
I promise you'll be in business in America. There'll be plenty. So, well, listen, thanks again for joining all our entrepreneurs out there listening. There is a wealth of knowledge in this, being able to create vision, but also watching how you spend your money. Just because you have revenue coming in does not mean it's net profit. So there's another way to structure your commission plans or think about your business. It's what hits the bottom line, not the top line. So thanks everybody for joining another live event of Test, Fail, Learn, Grow. Check out Howard on LinkedIn, debt.com. I know you can, even if you're not in a tough situation, you can always learn more about how to manage your money, manage your business, and getting an outside perspective, a professional advisor. Always great things. So thanks again for joining, and looking forward to connecting with you again soon.
Thanks so much.